Captain Li Jin wiped sweat from his forehead as he stared at the radar screen. 3 months of boring patrol duty along the outer rim, and finally something interesting showed up. A cargo ship was moving through restricted space without proper identification codes. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Jin of the Human Defense Force. Stop your engines and prepare for inspection, he spoke into his communication device. The silence that followed made his stomach feel uneasy. His crew gathered on the bridge. Yuna, his communications officer, shook her head. No response, Captain. They're not even acknowledging our signals. Park Woo, the ship's security chief, checked his weapon. Their ship design doesn't match any registered cargo haulers in our database. Something's definitely wrong here. Jin made his decision quickly. Send a warning shot across their bow. Maybe that'll get their attention. The moment their laser fired, the mysterious ship opened fire with everything they had. Energy blasts lit up space around the Morning Star like deadly fireworks. Jin's crew scrambled to battle stations. Return fire. Disable their engines, Jin shouted over the alarm sirens. The fight lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. The enemy ship was older and slower than Jin's patrol vessel. Soon their engines were smoking, and their weapons went silent. Hull breach detected on the cargo ship, reported Kim Tae from his engineering station. Looks like they're losing atmosphere. If anyone's alive over there, they won't be for long. Jin grabbed his helmet and suit. Boarding party. With me. You. Now you're in command while I'm gone. The damaged cargo ship felt like a tomb when Jin and his team stepped inside. Emergency lights flickered on and off, casting weird shadows on the metal walls. The air smelled of burning electronics and something else, something organic and unpleasant. Captain, over here, called Park Woo from ahead. You need to see this. Jin followed the voice through a narrow corridor toward the cargo bay. What? He found there made him stop breathing for a moment. Dozens of small creatures sat huddled in metal cages that looked like they were built in a hurry. The beings were about 3 feet tall with smooth green-gray skin that reminded him of reptiles. But their eyes were huge and dark and full of intelligence that made Jin's heart ache. Are they alive? Whispered Han Sul, the youngest member of the boarding team. One of the creatures looked directly at Jin. Its large eyes seemed to be asking for help without making any sound. The others pressed against the bars of their cages, reaching out with small clawed hands. Get these cages open. Now, Jin ordered, his voice rough with emotion. As his team worked to free the trapped beings, Jin searched the ship's bridge. All the computers had been wiped clean. The crew of smugglers lay dead at their stations, apparently killed by the ship's decompression during the fight. Captain, Park Woo's voice came through the radio. These creatures are scared, but they don't seem hurt. Well, most of them anyway. A few look sick or injured. Jin stared at the empty computer screens. No records, no flight plans, no clue where these beings came from or where they were supposed to go. Just dozens of intelligent creatures who had been stuffed into cages like cargo. Get them back to our ship, he said. Medical bay first for the injured ones. Set up temporary quarters for the others. Sir, shouldn't we contact headquarters first? Asked Han Sol-jin, looked back toward the cargo bay, where his crew was gently helping the creatures out of their prison. Something inside him rebelled against the idea of turning these beings over to bureaucrats who would probably just shuttle them around for months while filling out paperwork. We'll contact headquarters, he said finally. But first, let's make sure our guests are safe and healthy. Then we figure out what to do next. As they prepared to return to the Morning Star, Jin couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was going to change everything. These weren't just random aliens who got caught up in smuggling. Someone had captured them deliberately, caged them like animals, and was transporting them somewhere for reasons that probably weren't good. The question now was what a single patrol captain was supposed to do about it. The medical bay of the Morning Star had never been so crowded. Jin watched as Park Woo moved carefully between the small alien beings, checking their vital signs with portable scanners. The creatures, 37 of them in total, huddled together in small groups, their large dark eyes following every movement the humans made. Their heart rates are still elevated, Park Woo reported quietly. Classic signs of stress and trauma. Several show signs of dehydration and malnutrition. This one here, He pointed to a particularly small being curled up in the corner. Hasn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. Yuna knelt down a safe distance from the aliens, a tablet in her hands filled with simple pictures and symbols. She had been the ship's communications specialist for 5 years and spoke 7 different languages, but this was unlike anything she had encountered before. "Hello," she said softly, pointing to herself. "Yuna, human." She then pointed to one of the aliens and tilted her head questioningly. The creatures whispered among themselves in a series of soft clicking and humming sounds. Finally, one of the larger ones stepped forward. It was still only about 3 feet tall, but carried itself with obvious authority. The being pointed to itself and made a sound that sounded like Veltar. Then it gestured to the others and repeated the word. "Veltar," Yuna repeated carefully. The alien's eyes widened, and it nodded enthusiastically. Jin felt a small surge of hope. "They understand that we are trying to communicate." Over the next several hours, Yuna worked patiently with the Veltar leader. Using simple drawings on her tablet, she established basic concepts. A circle with rays meant sun or day. Wavy lines meant water. Stick figures helped them understand the difference between humans and Veltar. The breakthrough came when Yuna drew a picture of their current situation, a large ship with smaller beings inside it. The Veltar leader became agitated, clicking rapidly to the others. Then it grabbed the tablet and began drawing frantically. What it drew made Jin's blood run cold. The alien sketched a planet with Veltar figures scattered across it. Then it drew different aliens, taller, more aggressive-looking, arriving in ships. The next pictures showed Veltar being forced into cages and loaded onto vessels. "They were kidnapped," Jin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Someone raided their planet and took them by force." Yuna continued working with the leader, and slowly more details emerged. The Veltar lived on a peaceful world with no weapons or military. They had never encountered hostile aliens before. One day, ships appeared in their sky and soldiers poured out, capturing anyone they could find. Park Woo approached Jin with a worried expression. "Captain, I need to show you something." He led Jin to where several of the younger Veltar were resting. "Look at their wrists and ankles." Jin knelt down and saw faint marks around the creature's limbs, marks that looked like restraints had been there for a long time. "They've been chained," Park Woo said quietly. "Some of these marks are weeks old. These beings have been prisoners for a long time." Meanwhile, Yuna had made another discovery. She showed Jin a series of drawings the Veltar leader had made. They depicted other aliens, different species, also being captured and caged. "I think they're trying to tell us this isn't just about they're people," Yuna explained. "There are others, lots of others." As the hours passed, the Veltar began to relax slightly. They accepted food and water from the humans, though they remained cautious. A few of the younger ones even seemed curious about the human technology around them. Jin found himself staring at a small Veltar child who couldn't be more than a few years old. The little being had fallen asleep, curled up against what was probably its parent, tiny fingers clutching a simple cloth toy that had somehow survived their ordeal. "Sir," Kim Tae approached him. "Headquarters has been trying to reach us. They want a status report on our patrol." Jin felt a knot form in his stomach. According to regulations, he should have reported the discovery immediately. Alien refugees were supposed to be turned over to galactic enforcement for processing and eventual repatriation to their homeworlds. But looking at these terrified, traumatized beings, Jin couldn't bring himself to imagine handing them over to bureaucrats who would treat them like paperwork, instead of living creatures who had suffered unimaginable horrors. "Tell headquarters we're dealing with a technical malfunction in our communications array," Jin said finally. "We'll contact them when it's repaired." Kim Tae looked surprised but nodded. "How long should I tell them the repairs will take?" Jin watched as Yuna successfully taught a young Veltar how to draw a human stick figure. The little alien was actually smiling, the first time any of them had shown anything resembling happiness since their rescue. "Tell them it might take a while," Jin said. "These things can be complicated." He knew he was buying time, but time for what? He couldn't keep 37 alien refugees hidden forever. Sooner or later, He would have to make a decision that could change all their lives, including his own. For now, though, he was content to watch his crew slowly earn the trust of beings who had every reason to fear strangers. Maybe with enough patience, they could figure out how to help the Veltar find their way home safely. The question was whether anyone else would let them try. Kim Tae had always been good with computers, but the smuggler ship's systems were giving him a real headache. He sat hunched over his workstation, surrounded by damaged memory cores and circuit boards he had salvaged from the destroyed vessel. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered, carefully connecting another data fragment to his analysis equipment. "Give me something useful." Most of the ship's computers had been wiped clean before the attack, but Kim Tae knew that data was never really gone. It just got hidden in places most people didn't know to look. After 6 hours of painstaking work, his persistence finally paid off. "Captain," he called out excitedly, "you need to see this." Jin hurried over to Kim Tae's station, where strings of numbers and coordinates filled the screen. "What am I looking at?" "Navigation data," Kim Tae explained, pointing at the display. "The smugglers tried to wipe everything, but they missed some backup files buried deep in the system. These are jump coordinates, places they've been in the last few months." Jin studied the data carefully. The coordinates showed a path that wound through several remote star systems, all far from major shipping lanes or patrol routes. They were being very careful to stay off the radar. "That's not all," Kim Tae continued, pulling up another screen. "I found fragments of cargo manifests. Look at this. Biological specimens, live cargo, special handling required. The dates go back months, Captain." This wasn't their first trip. A chill ran down Jin's spine. "How many trips?" "At least a dozen that I can confirm, probably more. And get this, each shipment was bigger than the last. They were expanding their operation." Jin made a decision that he knew could end his career. "Plot a course to the first set of coordinates. We're going to backtrack their route." "Sir," Park Woo approached cautiously, "shouldn't we report this to headquarters first? This is bigger than anything our patrol ship can handle." "Maybe," Jin replied, "but if we contact headquarters now, they'll order us to turn over the Veltar. And let someone else investigate. I want to know what we're dealing with before we involve the bureaucrats." As the Morning Star changed course, something unexpected happened. The moment they entered the new star system, the Veltar became visibly distressed. They clustered together, clicking and humming in what sounded like urgent conversation. Han Sol, who had been monitoring their guests through the ship's internal cameras, noticed it first. "Captain, the Veltar are acting strange. They seem agitated." Jin went to the temporary quarters where the aliens were staying. The moment he entered, the Veltar leader approached him, pointing repeatedly at the viewing ports and making distressed sounds. Yu Na arrived with her tablet, ready to attempt communication. Through a series of drawings and gestures, they learned that the Veltar recognized this area of space. The leader drew frantic pictures showing ships like the smuggler vessel they had escaped from. "They've been here before," Yu Na translated, "or at least they've seen this place during their captivity. But that wasn't the strangest thing that happened during their investigation." While reviewing the ship's sensor logs, Kim Tae noticed something impossible. "Captain, this doesn't make sense," he said, staring at his computer screen. "Our navigation computer just updated itself with more accurate star charts for this system, but I didn't download any new data." Jin frowned. "Maybe there was an automatic update?" "No, sir, that's not how it works. Someone or something accessed our systems and improved our navigation data. The new charts are incredibly detailed, more accurate than anything in our official databases." The mystery deepened when their communications array suddenly started picking up faint signals from deep space, signals that their equipment shouldn't have been sensitive enough to detect. The answer came when Han Sol was working near a group of young Veltar. He was showing them how the ship's environmental controls worked when something extraordinary happened. One of the aliens gently touched the control panel, and suddenly the air circulation improved throughout the entire ship. "Did you see that?" Han Sol called out in amazement. "It just touched the panel and somehow optimized our life support systems." More discoveries followed quickly. When a Veltar was near the computer terminals, data processed faster. When they were in the engine room, the power systems ran more efficiently. It was as if the aliens could somehow communicate directly with the MAME. Ship's technology. Yuna made the most startling discovery of all. She was teaching a group of Veltar about human writing when she noticed something odd. When one alien learned something new, the others seemed to know it too, without any visible communication between them. "They're connected," she told Jin excitedly. "Somehow they can share information instantly with each other. It's like they have their own biological internet." As they continued following the smugglers' trail, the evidence mounted. Each star system they visited showed signs of recent salvage operations, official-sounding missions that removed dangerous biological materials from supposedly abandoned planets. But when they checked the records more carefully, they found disturbing patterns. These planets hadn't been abandoned. They had been home to small, peaceful civilizations that had simply vanished from all official records. "Captain," Kim Tae said grimly, "I think we've stumbled onto something much bigger than simple smuggling. This looks like systematic kidnapping of entire species." Jin stared out at the stars, thinking about the frightened Veltar in his ship's hold and the growing evidence of a massive criminal operation. "Keep following the trail," he ordered, "but increase our alert status. If we're right about this, then whoever is running this operation won't be happy to see us poking around." He was beginning to realize that rescuing the Veltar might have been the easy part. Finding out who was responsible for their suffering and stopping them from hurting others was going to be much more dangerous. But looking at the hope in his crew's eyes and remembering the relief on the Veltar faces when they were freed from their cages, Jin knew they had to try. The mining colony of Kepler Station looked like any other industrial outpost, grey metal buildings scattered across a barren asteroid, connected by enclosed walkways that protected workers from the vacuum of space. Jin's crew had traced the smugglers' route here, following a trail of coordinates that Kim Tae had painstakingly recovered from the destroyed ship's computers. "Just another boring mining operation," Han Sol muttered as he guided the Morning Star toward the station's docking bay. What could smugglers want with a place like this? Jin watched through the viewports as cargo ships loaded with raw materials departed the station. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. The station was too busy, too profitable for such a remote location. "Request permission to dock," Jin told their communications officer, Ra Min. "Tell them we're conducting a routine patrol inspection." Ra Min nodded and opened a channel to the station. Within minutes, they received clearance to dock, along with an overly friendly welcome from the station manager. "Captain Jin, welcome to Kepler Station." The manager, a nervous-looking man named Director Cho, greeted them at the airlock. "We don't get many patrol ships out here. Is there some kind of problem?" "Just routine," Jin replied, studying the man's face. Director Cho was sweating despite the cool temperature in the station. "We're tracking some unusual cargo movements in this sector." Director Cho's smile became even more forced. "Well, we're just a simple mining operation. Nothing unusual here. Would you like a tour of our facilities?" As they walked through the station, Jin noticed things that didn't add up. The mining equipment was top of the line, far more expensive than a remote asteroid operation could normally afford. The worker quarters were luxurious compared to typical mining colonies, and there were too many security guards for a simple mining station. While Jin kept Director Cho busy with questions about ore production, Ra Min quietly hacked into the station's communications network using equipment she had borrowed from Kim Tae. What she found made her stomach turn. "Captain," she whispered into her comm unit, "you need to get back to the ship now." Jin made excuses about checking on his crew and returned to the Morning Star, leaving Park Woo and Han Sol to continue the inspection. Back on the ship, Ra Min showed Jin what she had discovered. "I intercepted their encrypted communications. Look at this." The screen filled with messages between Director Cho and various corporate executives. Jin read in growing horror as the truth became clear. "Veltar homeworld sterilization complete." Read one message dated 3 months earlier. "All biological assets recovered. Recommend declaring planet uninhabitable due to plague outbreak." Another message was even more damning. "Latest shipment of Veltar specimens showing exceptional biotechnological integration capabilities. Recommend increasing harvest operations before news of their abilities spreads. They didn't just stumble. Across the Veltar, Jin said, his voice tight with anger. They deliberately attacked their planet and stole the entire population. Ra-Min pulled up more files. It gets worse, Captain. Look at these profit reports. The documents showed massive earnings from something called biological salvage operations. The numbers were staggering. Millions of credits from the sale of rare biotechnological specimens to private buyers across the galaxy. They're selling them as slaves, Jin realized. But not just any slaves. The Veltar's ability to interface with technology makes them incredibly valuable. Kim Tae had joined them and was analyzing the data. Captain, look at this list of buyers. These aren't random criminals. These are major corporations, research facilities, even some government agencies. The scope of the operation was breathtaking. The Veltar weren't the only victims. The files contained records of dozens of other species that had been harvested from their homeworlds under false pretenses. Each time the same pattern: declare the planet uninhabitable, evacuate or eliminate the population, then sell the survivors to the highest bidders. How is this possible? Ra-Min asked. How can they just make entire species disappear? Jin found the answer in a classified communication between Director Cho and someone identified only as the Coordinator. The message explained the system in chilling detail. Small peaceful species were targeted specifically because they couldn't defend themselves and because their disappearance would go unnoticed by the galactic community. Official records would be altered to show that their planets had suffered natural disasters or plague outbreaks. Any survivors would be classified as refugees and quietly distributed to buyers who needed specialized labor. Here it's not just smuggling, Jin said grimly. It's genocide for profit. The worst part was discovering how high up the conspiracy reached. The files contained payment records showing bribes to officials in galactic enforcement, the colonial administration, and even members of the Interspecies Council. People who were supposed to protect small civilizations were instead helping to destroy them. Captain, Ra-Min said quietly, there's something else. They know we're here. She showed him a recent communication that made Jin's blood run cold. Human patrol ship at Kepler Station, asking questions about cargo movements, recommend immediate action to protect operational security. The response was equally terrifying. Understood. Deploying security team to handle situation, no witnesses. Get Park Woo and Han Sol back here now, Jin ordered. We need to leave immediately. But it was too late. Through the viewports, Jin could see armed security ships moving to surround the Morning Star. Director Cho's friendly welcome had been a trap. They're jamming our communications, Ra-Min reported. I can't reach Park Woo or Han Sol. Jin realized that his crew had stumbled into something much more dangerous than simple smuggling. They had uncovered evidence of organized genocide, and the people responsible had too much money and power to let them leave alive. In the ship's temporary quarters, the Veltar seemed to sense the danger. They huddled together, their large eyes filled with fear that Jin recognized from their first rescue. These beings had seen their entire world destroyed by the same people who now surrounded the Morning Star. Kim Tae, can you get us out of here? Jin asked. Not with those security ships blocking the docking bay, Kim Tae replied. We are trapped, Captain. Jin looked at the evidence they had gathered. Proof of crimes against entire civilizations, documented genocide, corruption at the highest levels of galactic government. If they could get this information to the right people, they might be able to stop the trafficking network and save countless other species. But first, they had to survive long enough to tell anyone what they had learned. The first warning came. When Director Cho's voice crackled over the station's communication system, all pretense of friendliness gone. Captain Jin, you have something that belongs to us. Return our property immediately, and we might let you leave alive. Jin felt his jaw clench. Property? Those are living beings, not cargo. Those creatures are valuable assets that were legally salvaged from a dead world. You're interfering with legitimate business operations. Before Jin could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the Morning Star. 3 heavily armed security ships had detached from the mining station and were moving into attack formation around them. Captain, they're powering up weapons, Kim Tae reported from his engineering station. "These aren't normal security vessels. They're military grade." Jin grabbed the ship's intercom. "All hands, battle stations." "This is not a drill." He turned to Ramin. "Any word from Park Woo and Han Sol?" "Still nothing, sir. The station is jamming all our communications. The first energy blast rocked the Morning Star, sending everyone stumbling." Jin grabbed the captain's chair as sparks flew from damaged control panels. "Return fire," he ordered. "Target their weapon systems." But the Morning Star was a patrol vessel, not a warship. Their weapons were designed for stopping smugglers and pirates, not fighting 3 military-grade security ships at once. The second volley of enemy fire punched through their shields and damaged the main engines. "We can't take much more of this," Kim Tae shouted over the noise of failing systems. "Hull breach on Deck 3, and we're losing power to the weapons array." That's when something extraordinary happened. The Veltar, who had been huddled in their temporary quarters during the attack, suddenly spread throughout the ship. The elder Veltar appeared on the bridge, moving with purpose despite the chaos around them. Before anyone could stop them, several Veltar placed their hands on the ship's control panels. Immediately, the Morning Star systems began responding faster and more efficiently than Jin had ever seen. "What are they doing?" Ramin asked in amazement, as her communications console suddenly started working perfectly, despite visible damage. The answer became clear, as the ship's weapons systems, which had been barely functional moments before, began firing with incredible precision. Each shot found its target, disabling the security ship's weapons one by one. "They're helping us," Kim Tae realized. "Somehow they're making our systems work better." The Veltar elder approached Jin and touched his arm gently. Through gestures and the few human words it had learned, it managed to communicate that its people wanted to help their rescuers. "Navigation systems are running at 200% efficiency," Han Sol's replacement pilot, Do Hai, reported in wonder. She had returned to the ship just as the attack began. "I'm seeing sensor readings I didn't know our equipment could produce. With the Veltar's help, the Morning Star fought back against impossible odds. Their shields strengthened, their weapons fired more accurately, and their engines performed better than they ever had before. But the enemy had more ships and heavier weapons." Another blast struck the ship, this time hitting the medical bay. Du Hai, who had been helping evacuate the wounded, was caught in the explosion. Park Woo and Ra Min found her unconscious with a serious head injury. "Medical bay is destroyed," Park Woo reported grimly. "Du Hai needs immediate attention, but our medical equipment is offline." That's when the Veltar showed another of their remarkable abilities. Several of the smaller aliens approached Do Hai and gently touched her injured head. Jin watched in amazement as the pilot's vital signs stabilized and her breathing became stronger. "They're healing her," Yuna whispered. "I don't understand. How? But they're actually healing her injuries." The battle raged for another 20 minutes before the security ships finally retreated. But the victory came at a cost. The Morning Star's engines were severely damaged. Their medical bay was destroyed, and they had used most of their ammunition. "We can't stay here," Jin announced to his crew. "They'll be back with reinforcements, and next time we won't be so." Lucky. Using the Veltar-enhanced systems, they managed to limp away from Kepler Station and find refuge in a nearby nebula where the enemy ships couldn't track them. But Jin knew their troubles were just beginning. "Captain," Ramin said quietly, "I'm picking up communications from the mining station. They're reporting us as pirates who stole valuable cargo. There's already a bounty on our heads." The Veltar elder approached Yuna with urgent clicking sounds. Through their established communication system, it managed to convey a message that made everyone's heart sink. "They're saying there are more," Yuna translated. "Hundreds more Veltar are still being held at different locations. And it's not just their people. There are other species too, all being sold as slaves." Jin stared out at the swirling gases of the nebula that hid their damaged ship. They had rescued 37 Veltar, but hundreds more were still suffering, in captivity, and now instead of being heroes, they were fugitives with a price on their heads. "Sir," Kim Tae said hesitantly, "what do we do now? We can't fight this trafficking network alone, and we can't trust galactic enforcement when we don't know how far the corruption goes." Jin looked around at his crew, wounded, frightened, but still determined to do what was right. He thought, "About Du Hai, slowly recovering thanks to the Veltar's healing abilities. He remembered the terror in the aliens' eyes when they were first rescued, and the trust they had shown by helping defend the ship. "We find allies," he said finally. "Somewhere. Out there. There have to be other people who know what's happening and want to stop it. If I find them, and then we figure out how to shut down this whole operation." The Veltar elder seemed to understand Jin's words. It nodded slowly, then gestured to its people. All around the ship, the small aliens placed their hands on various systems, somehow sending a message of hope and determination through the Morning Star's communications array. Jin didn't know who might receive that message, but he hoped someone out there was listening, someone who could help them save the hundreds of innocent beings still trapped in the trafficking network's web. The fight was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The encrypted message arrived 3 days after they had hidden in the nebula. Ramin nearly missed it among the background noise of space communications, but the Veltar noticed it first. Their elder approached her console and gently touched the communication array, somehow boosting the signal strength. "Captain, you need to hear this," Ramin called out, her voice filled with excitement and caution. The message was brief but gave Jin hope for the first time since their escape from Kepler Station. "We know what you found. We've been fighting the same enemy. If you want to help end this, meet us at coordinates 847.23.156. Come alone but bring proof." Jin stared at the message. It could be a trap, but staying hidden in the nebula wasn't solving anything. Duhai was recovering well thanks to the Veltar's healing abilities, but their ship was still damaged, and they were running low on supplies. "Sir, I don't like this," Park Wu said. "How do we know we can trust them?" Before Jin could answer, the Veltar elder approached with Yu Na, who had been working on expanding their communication methods. Through a combination of drawings and basic words, the alien conveyed something surprising. "It's saying they recognize something about that transmission," Yu Na explained. "The elder thinks they've encountered these people before, or at least heard about them from other Veltar." 2 days later, the Morning Star arrived at the coordinates, which led to an abandoned research station orbiting a dead planet. The station looked empty, but Jin's sensors detected life signs inside. "This is Captain Jin of the Morning Star," he broadcast on an open channel. "Someone invited us to this party." The response came immediately. "Welcome, Captain. Dock at Bay 7. Leave your weapons on your ship. We're all friends here." The docking bay was dimly lit, but Jin could see several people waiting for them. As he and Yuna stepped off their ship, a tall woman with graying hair approached them. "I'm Bo Jin," she said, extending her hand. "Former galactic enforcement agent. Current pain in the neck for some very powerful people." Behind her stood a younger man with quick, intelligent eyes. "Li Jia," he introduced himself, "journalist, investigator, and someone who's been trying to expose this trafficking network for 3 years. Bo Jin led them through the station's corridors, which had been converted into a makeshift headquarters. Computer screens covered every available wall space, and Jin saw evidence files scattered across multiple tables. "We've been tracking the slavery ring for years," Bo Jin explained as they walked. "Started when I was still with Galactic Enforcement and noticed that certain missing persons cases kept getting buried. When I tried to investigate, I was told to drop it. When I refused, I was forced to resign." Li Jia picked up the story. "I started investigating from the journalism side when entire colonies kept disappearing from the news. Planets that were supposedly hit by plagues or natural disasters, but no one could ever verify the details." They entered a large room where a dozen other people were working at computer terminals. Jin recognized some faces from wanted posters, rebels, whistleblowers, and other people who had crossed powerful interests. "The problem is proof," Bo Jin continued. "We know the trafficking network exists. We know some of the people involved. But we can never get hard evidence that would hold up in court. The conspiracy goes too deep, and they're too good at covering their tracks. Until now," Li Jia added hopefully. "Your message mentioned proof. What did you find?" Jin gestured to Yuna, who activated a portable display showing some of the files they had recovered from Kepler Station. The room fell silent as the evidence scrolled past. Payment records, shipping manifests, communications between conspirators. "This is incredible," Li Jia breathed. "This is exactly what we've been looking for. How did you get past their encryption?" That's when Yuna explained about the Veltar and their remarkable abilities. The Resistance members listened in amazement. She described how the aliens could interface directly with computer systems. "You brought them with you?" Bo-Jin asked. "Some of them volunteered to help," Jin replied. "They understand that stopping this network is the only way to save their people who are still trapped." Within hours, the Veltar were working alongside the Resistance's computer experts. What would have taken human hackers months to accomplish, the aliens completed in days. They cracked encryption codes, recovered deleted files, and traced financial transactions across dozens of star systems. The picture that emerged was worse than anyone had imagined. The trafficking network wasn't just targeting small, peaceful species. They were systematically eliminating any civilization that possessed valuable biological or technological capabilities but lacked the military power to defend themselves. "Look at this," Li Jia said, pointing to a star map covered with red markers. "Each of these is a world that's been sterilized in the last 5 years. 23 different species, all declared extinct due to natural disasters. But the most shocking discovery came when the Veltar accessed the network's central database. Hidden in layers of encrypted files, they found the location of the main trafficking hub, a massive converted asteroid facility called Processing Station Alpha. "It's enormous," Kim Tae said, studying the facility's schematics. "Big enough to hold thousands of prisoners, with its own fleet of security ships and manufacturing facilities." The Veltar elder worked with Yuna to convey more disturbing information. Through their biological network, the aliens on the morning star had somehow made contact with Veltar still held captive at the processing station. "They're saying there are over 300 Veltar there," Yuna translated, her voice shaking. "But that's not all. There are dozens of other species too, beings from worlds that were supposedly destroyed years ago." Bo-Jin studied the intelligence, data with the eye of an experienced law enforcement officer. "This is it," she said finally. "This is our chance to shut down the entire operation. If we can rescue the prisoners and capture the facility's records, we'll have enough evidence to bring down everyone involved." "It won't be easy," Li Jia warned. "The station is heavily defended, and we don't have military ships." Jin looked around. The room at the faces of people who had risked everything to fight against impossible odds. He thought about the Veltar on his ship, who had lost their entire world, but still chose to help others. He remembered Do-Hai, lying unconscious after the battle, and how the aliens had saved her life without being asked. "We'll find a way," he said. "We have something they don't expect. We have people who believe that doing the right thing is more important than following orders or making profits." The Veltar elder approached Jin and placed a small hand on his arm. Through Yuna, it conveyed a simple message that filled the room with determination. "Our people have waited long enough. It's time to bring them home." The planning began immediately. They had one chance to strike at the heart of the trafficking network, rescue hundreds of enslaved beings, and expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of galactic government. It was going to be the most dangerous mission any of them had ever attempted, but for the first time since discovering the Veltar in their cages, Jin felt hope that they might actually succeed. The abandoned research station's main conference room had been transformed into a war room. Star charts covered every wall, and holographic displays showed the layout of Processing Station Alpha from every angle. Jin stared at the massive facility rotating slowly in the display, knowing that hundreds of innocent beings were trapped inside. "It's like trying to break into a fortress," Minwoo said, studying the defensive positions. As the Resistance's weapons specialist, he had seen plenty of difficult targets, but this one was different. 24 defensive platforms, a patrol fleet of 30 ships, and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Bo-Jin traced the facility's outer defenses with her finger. "The good news is they're not expecting an attack. Why would they? As far as the galaxy knows, this is just another mining operation in empty space." Li Jia pulled up shipping schedules on his tablet. "There's a supply convoy arriving in 6 days, 3 cargo ships with minimal escort. If we time it right, we can slip in with them." "And then what?" Park Woo asked. "Even if we get inside, We're talking about rescuing potentially thousands of prisoners from a facility designed to hold them. We'd need an army. That's when Yu-Na spoke up from across the room, where she had been working with the Veltar Elder and 2 other aliens. Actually, we might not need an army. Show them what you showed me. The Veltar Elder approached the holographic display and gently touched the control panel. Immediately, the image changed to show the internal structure of Processing Station Alpha in incredible detail. Corridors, security checkpoints, holding areas, and most importantly, the central computer core. How did they get this information? Minwu asked in amazement. The Veltar who are still trapped there, Yu-Na explained. They've been mapping the facility through their biological network. Every time guards move them to different areas, they share what they see with each other. They've been planning their own escape for months. The Elder Veltar began drawing on Yu-Na's tablet, showing a simple but effective plan. If a small team could reach the central computer core, the aliens could override the entire facility's security system. Doors would unlock, cameras would go blind, and defensive weapons would shut down. It's brilliant, Kim Tae said, studying the technical specifications. But someone has to get them close enough to interface with the main computer. That means going deep into the most heavily guarded part of the station. Jin felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him. How close? The Veltar Elder held up its small hands, showing a distance of about 3 feet. Yu-Na translated, "Direct physical contact. The security around the computer core is too strong for them to break through remotely, so we need to fight our way to the most defended area of the station, hold it long enough for the Veltar to work their magic, then fight our way back out with hundreds of rescued prisoners," Minwu summarized. Piece of cake. Despite the sarcasm, Jin could see determination in the weapons specialist's eyes. Everyone in the room understood the stakes. This wasn't just about the Veltar anymore. It was about stopping a network that was systematically destroying entire civilizations. "What about the security fleet?" Do-Hai asked. She had recovered enough from her injuries to pilot again, though. She still moved carefully. 30 ships against our handful of vessels won't end well," Bo-Jin smiled grimly. "That's where our inside information helps. Li Jia has been investigating the corporate structure of the trafficking network. We know when the security commander takes his personal ship out for inspections." Li Jia nodded. "Commander Yoon leaves the station every week at the same time to check the outer patrol routes. He takes 12 ships with him, including the most heavily armed ones. That gives us a 6-hour window when the station's defenses are at their weakest." 6. Hours to get in, reach the computer core, free hundreds of prisoners, and get everyone out safely, Jin said. "It's not much time." The Veltar Elder approached Jin and touched his arm gently, conveying something through Yu-Na. "It says that's more time than their people have had hope in months. They're willing to take the risk." Over the next 3 days, the plan took shape. The Resistance had managed to acquire several small ships disguised as supply vessels. Jin's crew would take the Morning Star in first, using their patrol ship credentials to get past the outer checkpoints. Once inside, they would create a distraction, while a smaller team used maintenance tunnels to reach the computer core. The moment the Veltar shut down security, "Every ship we have hits the facility at once," Minwu explained, pointing to attack vectors on the tactical display. "We overwhelm whatever defenses are left and start evacuation procedures, but the most dangerous part would fall to Jin and a small team. They would have to escort 3 Veltar through the station's most secure areas, fighting past guards and automated defenses to reach the computer core. I should lead the assault team," Park Woo volunteered. "You're needed to coordinate the overall operation." Jin shook his head. "The Veltar trust me. They've been through hell, and I'm not asking them to risk their lives with someone they don't." "No," Yu-Na stepped forward. "If Jin's going, I'm going too. The Veltar will need someone who can communicate with them during the mission. And you'll need someone who knows how to fight," Minwu added. "Count me in." As the planning continued, Jin found himself watching the Veltar who had volunteered for the mission. They were small, peaceful beings who had never known violence before being captured. Yet they were willing to walk into the most dangerous part of the facility to save their people. "Are you sure about this?" he asked the Elder through Yu-Na. "If we fail, you might never see your homeworld again." The Elder's response was simple but powerful. Our homeworld is gone. Our people are our home now. We must try to save them. On the final night before the mission, Jin stood in the observation deck of the research station, looking out at the stars. In less than 24 hours, they would either strike a decisive blow against the trafficking network or die trying. Having second thoughts, Jin joined him at the viewport. Every minute, Jin admitted. But then I remember those cages we found the Veltar in, and I know we have to try. You know there's a good chance some of us won't make it back, Jin said quietly. Jin nodded. But if we don't try, then hundreds of innocent beings will spend the rest of their lives in slavery. That's not a choice I can live with. Tomorrow would bring the most dangerous day of their lives. But tonight, Jin felt something he hadn't experienced since first finding the Veltar. Hope that they might actually win. The supply convoy approached Processing Station Alpha right on schedule. Hidden among the legitimate cargo ships, Jin's team held their breath as they passed through the outer security checkpoints. The Morning Star, disguised as a maintenance vessel, followed behind the larger ships. Scanning complete, came the bored voice of the station's traffic controller. Proceed to Docking Bay 7 for unloading. Jin exchanged glances with Yu-Na and Min Woo. So far, their fake identification codes were working perfectly. Behind them, 3 Veltar sat quietly, their large eyes filled with determination despite the obvious fear. Remember, Jin whispered into his comm unit, we have exactly 4 hours before Commander Yoon returns with the main security fleet. After that, we're outnumbered 10-1. As they docked, Jin could see the massive scale of Processing Station Alpha. The converted asteroid was larger than most cities, with countless levels stretching deep into the rock. Somewhere in those depths, hundreds of enslaved beings waited for rescue. The first part of the plan went smoothly. Using stolen maintenance uniforms, Jin's team moved through the outer corridors without attracting attention. The Veltar stayed. Close, their small forms hidden beneath oversized coveralls. Central Computer Core is 12 levels down, Yu-Na reported, checking her tablet. The prisoners are being held in sections 5 through 8. They had made it halfway to their target. When everything went wrong, a security guard noticed that one of the Veltar was too short for their disguise. Before Jin could react, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Intruders in Section 3 echoed through the corridors. All security teams respond immediately. So, a much for the quiet approach, Min Woo muttered, pulling out his weapon as armed guards rounded the corner ahead of them. The corridor erupted in laser fire. Jin pushed the Veltar behind a maintenance panel as energy bolts sizzled past their heads. Min Woo returned fire with deadly accuracy, dropping 2 guards before they could take cover. This way, Yu-Na shouted, leading them down a maintenance shaft that bypassed the main corridors. But the facility's security systems were tracking their every move. Automated turrets dropped from the ceiling, forcing them to fight their way through each section. The resistance fighters who had infiltrated other parts of the station reported similar problems over the radio. Heavy casualties in Section 5, came Jin's voice through the static. We found the first group of prisoners, but the guards are putting up fierce resistance. Jin's team finally reached the Central Computer Core after an hour of running. Battles. The massive chamber housed the station's main computer systems, protected by energy shields and automated defenses. The Veltar need to get within 3 feet of the main console, Yu-Na reminded him as they took cover behind a computer bank. But between them and the console stood 6 heavily armed guards and 2 automated defense turrets. Min Woo studied the Aijao situation grimly. I can take out the guards, but those turrets will cut down anyone who tries to reach the console, he said. That's when Jin made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Cover me. I'm going to clear a path for the Veltar. Before anyone could stop him, Jin sprinted across the open chamber, drawing fire from both the guards and the automated turrets. Laser bolts burned through his uniform, and one caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Jin, Yu-Na screamed, but he kept moving, using his body to shield the Veltar as they raced toward the computer console. Min Woo's covering fire dropped the remaining guards, but the turrets kept firing. Jin felt another bolt burn across his back as he threw himself between the weapons and the Veltar. The moment the aliens touched the main console, everything changed. The facility's lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows as every computer system in the station began shutting down. Security systems offline, one of the Veltar reported through Yuna, who was trying to stop Jin's bleeding. All cell doors opening, defense platforms disabled. Throughout the station, the sounds of battle began to change. Resistance fighters reported that cell doors were opening everywhere, releasing hundreds of prisoners who had been trapped for months or years. "You should see this," Li Jia's voice came over the radio, filled with amazement. "There are species here I've never seen before. Beings from worlds that were supposed to be extinct. But the Veltar weren't finished. Working together, they began downloading every file in the station's computer systems. Names, dates, financial records, communication logs, everything the fee. Trafficking network had tried to hide. "Got it," Yuna announced, helping Jin to his feet. "Every transaction, every bribe, every official who was involved. This is enough evidence to bring down the entire conspiracy." The evacuation took 3 more hours. Resistance ships ferried load after load of rescued prisoners to safety, while Jin's team held the computer core. By the time Commander Yun returned, with his security fleet, processing Station Alpha was empty, except for the traffickers themselves, who had been locked in their own cells by the station's compromised systems. Jin sat in the Morning Star's medical bay, his wounds bandaged, but his spirits high. Through the viewports he could see dozens of ships carrying the rescued prisoners to safety. The Veltar elder approached him, moving slowly but with obvious joy. Through Yuna, it conveyed a simple message. "Our people are free. The galaxy will know what happened here. Thank you for keeping your promise." "What promise?" Jin asked, confused. Yuna smiled through her tears. "When you first found them in those cages, you promised them they would be safe. Today, you kept that promise for hundreds of beings across dozens of species. As news of the raid spread across the galaxy, governments began arresting officials whose names appeared in the trafficking network's files. Corporations involved in the slavery ring saw their stock prices collapse overnight. The conspiracy that had seemed untouchable just days before crumbled under the weight of its own documented crimes. Jin looked out at the stars, knowing that, somewhere out there, the Veltar and hundreds of other rescued beings were beginning new lives in freedom. It had cost them dearly. Several resistance fighters had died in the assault, and Jin would carry scars from his wounds for the rest of his life. But as he watched the rescue ships disappearing into hyperspace, carrying their precious cargo of liberated prisoners toward new homes and new hope, Jin knew it had been worth every sacrifice. The trafficking network was broken, its leaders facing justice, and hundreds of innocent beings were free. Sometimes doing the right thing was enough to change the galaxy. 6 months after the raid on Processing Station Alpha, Jin stood in the courtroom on New Geneva, watching as the last of the trafficking network's leaders received their sentences. The judge's voice echoed through the packed chamber as she read the verdict. "Director Cho, you are sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against sentient beings, conspiracy to commit genocide, and trafficking in intelligent life forms." The man who had once run Kepler Station looked nothing like the confident executive who had welcomed Jin to his mining operation. His empire of slavery had crumbled when the Veltar's evidence exposed every detail of his operation. "That's the 47th conviction this month," Yuna whispered to Jin as they left the courthouse. "The prosecutors say they have enough evidence to keep trials going for years." The data recovered from Processing Station Alpha had been a treasure trove for investigators across the galaxy. Financial records showed bribes paid to officials on dozens of worlds. Communication logs revealed which corporations had knowingly bought enslaved beings. Shipping manifests proved that entire species had been wiped out for profit. "Any word from the Veltar?" Jin asked as they walked through the busy streets of the capital city. Yana smiled. "They sent another message yesterday. The terraforming of their new world is going better than expected. They think they'll be ready to start building permanent cities within a year." It had taken months to find the right planet for the Veltar. They needed a world with the right atmosphere, the right gravity, and most importantly, strong legal protections to ensure no one could ever enslave them again. The planet they finally chose was in a system protected by 3 different governments, all of whom had signed treaties guaranteeing the Veltar's independence. "They're still asking if you'll visit," Yunar added. "The Elder says they have something they want to show you." Jin had been avoiding the invitation, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because seeing the Veltar in their new home would make everything feel final. The adventure was over, the bad guys were in prison, and everyone was moving on with their lives. The next morning, Jin found himself aboard a transport ship heading to the Veltar's new world. His crew had scattered after the trials ended. Park Woo had taken a promotion to lead security training for galactic enforcement. Min Woo was helping other resistance groups fight slavery in distant systems, and Do Haye had become a pilot for refugee rescue operations. But they had all chosen to come with him for this final journey. "There it is," Do Haye announced from the pilot's seat as a blue-green planet appeared on the view screen. Veltar Prime, as they're calling it. The planet was beautiful, with vast oceans and continents covered in the kind of vegetation the Veltar needed to thrive. As their shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Jin could see small settlements dotting the landscape, connected by roads and waterways. The Veltar Elder met them at the landing pad, looking healthier and happier than Jin had ever seen. Through their improved communication system, the aliens had learned basic human language during their months of freedom. It welcomed them warmly. "Thank you for coming," the Elder said in carefully pronounced words. "We have much to show you." The tour of the settlement was amazing. The Veltar had used their biotechnological abilities to create buildings that seemed to grow from the Earth itself. Plants and technology worked together in ways that human scientists were only beginning to understand. "We often share this with humans," the Elder said as they walked through a garden where computers made of living tissue processed data while providing food for the community. "Our gift to thank you for freedom." Jin stopped walking, understanding what the Veltar was offering. Their biotechnology could revolutionize human civilization, cure diseases, solve environmental problems, create abundance where there had been scarcity. "It's incredible," he said finally. "But I can't accept this gift." The Elder looked confused, and several other Veltar gathered around, clicking among themselves in concern. "Your people have suffered enough," Jin explained. "You've lost your homeworld, been enslaved and tortured, and now you're finally building a new life in peace. You don't owe humanity anything. This technology belongs to you to help you build the civilization you want." The Elder was quiet for a long moment, then it smiled, an expression Jin had never seen on a Veltar face before. "This is why we trust humans," it said. "You could take what you want, but you choose what is right." That evening, as Jin and his crew prepared to leave, the Veltar held a ceremony in their honor. Hundreds of the small beings gathered in the settlement's central plaza, their voices joining in a haunting song that seemed to make the very air shimmer with harmonics. "What are they singing about?" Du Haye asked, wiping tears from her eyes. Na listened carefully, then translated. "They're singing about the day they were freed, about the humans who chose to help strangers instead of following orders. They're promising to remember and to teach their children to remember what real courage looks like." As their shuttle lifted off from Veltar Prime, Jin looked down at the lights of the growing settlements. In a few generations, this world would be home to millions of Veltar, all living free because a handful of humans had decided that doing the right thing was more important than following protocol. "So what now, Captain?" Park Woo asked as they headed back to space. Jin thought about it for a moment. The Human Defense Force had offered him a promotion and a desk job processing reports. The media wanted him to write books and give speeches about heroism. Politicians wanted to use his story to advance their careers. "Now we go back to work," he said finally. "There are still people out there who need help, and someone has to be willing to help them." 6 months later, the Morning Star was back on patrol in the outer systems, flying the same routes where they had first discovered the Veltar. But everything was different now. Jin's crew knew they weren't just enforcing regulations or checking shipping manifests. They were protecting the innocent, standing between predators and their prey. "Contact ahead, Captain," Du Haye reported from the pilot's seat. "Cargo ship with suspicious emissions." "Let's go take a look," Jin said, settling into his captain's chair. "You never know what we might find." As the Morning Star changed course to intercept the unknown vessel, Jin smiled. He had learned that sometimes the most important moments in life came disguised as routine patrol duties. The key was being ready to do the right thing when the moment arrived, regardless of the cost. Outside the viewports, the stars shone with the promise of new adventures and new chances to make a difference in the galaxy. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.